another minute or two. We have another council member who I think is going to be here soon. So we'll start in just a moment. Did any of you hear from Sarah that she may not be here? She may be just Well, in the interest of time and all of those who were able to make the meeting, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to call to order the January 20th study session on the Woodie Seat Bridge project. I would like to remind the council that the purpose of this meeting is to provide staff with direction on how to proceed with the replacement of the Woodie Seat Bridge. We'll first hear from staff on the history of the project and then go over a few design options followed by staff recommendations, at which point we'll open it up to council for questions. After that, if there are members of the audience who would like to comment, we do invite you to do so, but ask that you sign in your name and address on the sheet provided. We will call those who have signed in up to order in the order that you signed up in. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jeff Peterson.
Thanks, Jade. And that signature sheet is just out in the hall for anybody who needs that. So tonight I'd like to introduce a few people, or the people that actually did the bulk of this work for tonight. Jessica Lowe, who's the Assistant City Engineer, and then also Jeff Shank, the Engineering Construction Manager for the Engineering Department. They put in a lot of work in compiling and preparing the options so we can objectively consider the different options going forward that are presented tonight. So, like Jade said, the intent of this is to try to narrow down the options so we have direction to move forward on some improvements toward the Woodie Seat corridor. So, as you know, we have temporarily closed Woodie Seat, and a pothole turned into some temporarily replacing an approach slab to the Avenue B bridge on the north side. This kind of puts an emphasis on selecting a path forward to get this corridor repaired and upgraded. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jeff Shank, and he'll tell you a little more about history and those types of things.
All right, let's give this a shot. So Woodie Seat was constructed in 1958 by the Kansas Department of Transportation. In 2005, Kdot rerouted K96 around Hutchinson and transferred ownership of Woodie Seat to the city of Hutch. Woodie Seat was identified for a mill and overlay in 2016, but while scoping the project, several issues were identified, including failing bridge infrastructure and medians, as well as high accident volumes at the northbound Woodie Seat and Avenue A off-ramp. Upon identification of the high accident intersection, the city staff requested a TEEP study to be performed by Kdot. So TEEP stands for the Transportation Engineering Assistance Program. It is federally funded and administered by Kdot. The intent is to perform traffic analysis and services for local agencies to analyze transportation challenges. These analyses are performed by traffic engineering consultants selected by Kdot. They are typically safety-related requests for failing infrastructure is not a reason for a TEEP study, nor is replacement in kind. In 2017, the TEEP study was granted to the city and initiated. The consultants discovered that the intersection does not meet the criteria of a dangerous intersection, but it does meet the criteria of a dangerous intersection, but there was no financial responsible way of increasing safety with the current configuration. In 2018, the city requested a second TEEP study to help identify ways to mitigate the dangerous intersection. Kdot suggested studying an at-grade roundabout. So in the photos here, the left one is a picture that shows 39 accidents that happened between 2013 and 2017 when the study was initially began. And the right slide is a picture of a semi descending the off-ramp with a bicyclist at the bottom. With the way the descending drivers have to look over their shoulder, it isn't possible for them to see things in front of them. The grade is steep, which means you approach the intersection fast. The semi-driver in this photo actually did not see the bicyclist and went through the yield sign. Luckily, you can see the bicyclist stopped at the last moment and let the semi go in front of it. So, the 2018 TEEP study evaluated several different options, comparing them to the existing interchange. These are the options that we'll be going over today. Options 1 through 4 were used comparing the current then 2018 and future 2040 traffic volumes. Options 1 through 3 all involved removing the Avenue A and Avenue B bridges. Option 4 is the only one that keeps the bridge in their configuration, although all the upgrades are going to be required. The 5th option was not studied in the TEEP, and it is to end the Woodie Seat Freeway at Avenue F. This option was not studied due to its broad scope, and it affects more than one intersection. So with that, we're going to go over the options. Here's Jessica.
So we have 5 options to go over tonight. If you have any questions as I'm going through each option, feel free to stop me and ask a clarification, but we'll try and do most of the questions at the end when we get into our discussion. So for the first 3 options that I'm going to go over, they're very similar, and they all require the removal of Avenues A and B bridges in order to end the Woodie Seat Freeway at the same elevation that Avenue A currently is right now. Shown here is the profile of the existing greater slope. It's kind of hard to see on the screen, but you can see the Avenue B, Avenue A, and Avenue C, and the bridges that go over them. And then the proposed grade for options 1 through 3, which is a 4% slope right after Avenue C, coming down to meet where Avenue A is. Like to say, if, just for some scale, that currently the off-ramp from Woodie Seat to Avenue A is 5.5%, and the on-ramp going southbound from Avenue A is 6%. And then the on and off loops that you drive on the north side of Avenue A, those are at about 3.8%. So the new grade would be very similar to what the grade of those loops are. So we'll start with option 1. This is a single lane approach from Woodie Seat to Avenue A, ending in a T intersection. The northbound Woodie Seat traffic would be stop controlled at first with a stop sign, and then the stop sign would eventually be converted to a stop light if and when warrants are met. New sidewalks would carry pedestrians from Avenue B either north to Avenue A or south to Avenue C to maintain pedestrian access. Included with this option are pavement improvements from Avenue F to C and bridge repairs to the Avenue C bridge. And actually, all of these options are included in 1 through 3. If an option 1 through 3 is chosen, we'll be doing the road improvements from F to C.
Okay.
So we'll go through some pros and cons of this option. I do want to comment at the beginning, and I won't say it for all 5 options, but it's important to look qualitatively rather than quantitatively at some of these. You may see one of the options has 1 con, and you think, oh, well, it only has 1 con, but it's a big one. So just try and keep that in mind as we go through this. So benefit of option 1 is that we actually do remove the 2 bridges. And what that means is we don't have the future maintenance of those bridges or the cost to replace them. There are fewer accidents than current right now at that interchange. In fact, we would have approximately 4.7 fewer accidents per year than existing. And that equates to a 20-year societal savings of $2.16 million. I want to talk a little bit right now about what societal savings means, because that's not money in our pocket that we can spend on this project. That's money in the pockets of society or the road users. Every time there's an accident, it costs people money. It certainly costs the vehicle owner money. It costs money because of car insurance. The more accidents you have, your insurance rates go up. People go to the hospital and they're using those services. So I'll just speak generally that if you have a fatality, it costs society approximately $4.75 million for every fatal accident. If you have an injury accident, depending on the type of injury, it's on average about $175,000 per accident. It ranges. If you have a serious injury, like a debilitating injury, it's actually closer to $500,000. But about $175 is what we're looking at for that. And then if it's just property damage, you're talking about $3,000 an accident. So just for clarification about what that is, again, we're not getting $2.16 million that we can spend to pick an option and use it. It's money that we would be saving people that live live here and use the roadway. And then this option would allow 4 acres of land to be available for additional green space or potentially a connection to Southwest Bricktown Park. You can see in the map behind me the 2 large on and off ramps that kind of loop to the north. Those would be gone now, and all of that space would be available for grass or a park or something like that to be decided. The cons of this option are that the PM rush hour traffic delays for the current traffic are very long. I want to explain what that means a little bit. In the TEEP study, the traffic engineers study current conditions or current traffic counts and then projected traffic counts. And so when they look at both of those, you can get, based on what the traffic currently is, we would have a delay of X amount. And then in some cases, we might be okay with what current traffic is. And then the future traffic, as the city continues to grow or as more people start to use the intersection, there are lots of things that go into that. We look at the delays that would happen then. And so we need to make sure that whatever decision we're making considers not just the current use, but also what will happen in the future. For this particular option, with a T intersection, there is an approximate 156 second per vehicle delay. So as you're coming off of Woodie Seat to that stop sign and waiting to turn, you'd be waiting quite a while. I just want to point out too, for comparison, we're all wondering, what is 156 seconds? What does that feel like? A few years ago, a TEEP study was done at the 11th and K61 interchange. That delay currently, the average delay is 78 seconds. So you're looking at a twice as long delay than what 11th and K61 is. Just keep that in mind too. And of course, a big con of this one is that Avenue B would be closed at Woodie Seat. So let's talk about the cost. For each option, we have several phases. So I'll break those down a little bit. But phase 1 on this is, again, the same as options 2 and 3, would be the Woodie Seat improvements from Avenue F to C. This includes mill and overlay of the roadway. It includes some drainage repairs. It includes a few taking care of a few approach slabs, kind of like what's going on with Avenue B right now. We would be taking care of those for those other bridges in that section. And this is about $1.9 million. Phase 2 of this project would be that 1-lane connection to Avenue A. This is the removal of the 2 bridges. This is the installation of that T intersection. And because of the nature of what this option means, we're taking care of the pavement in that section, obviously. We have new pavement there. This is a little over $4 million. And then the last portion is Avenue C bridge repairs for $1.2 million. I do want to point out on Avenue C, you're going to see in one of the options how the cost of replacing Avenue B, and you'll ask, why is Avenue C repair so expensive? Avenue C is a different type of bridge. It's a lot longer. It goes over the railroad. There are complications with that last one, but mainly the length and the type, of that bridge are what's driving up those repairs versus replacement. And I can say too, if we were to postpone those repairs and eventually get to the point where we need to replace Avenue C bridge, we're talking about a $4.5 million bridge. So it would be important to repair that now before it gets out of hand and get ourselves a little bit more life out of that structure. Okay, so moving on to the next option, looks a lot like option 1, except this option is a 2-lane connection with stop control. So we have 2 lanes coming off of Woodie Seat, 2 lanes going onto Woodie Seat. Again, this option removes the Avenue A and B bridges, and at first this would be stop controlled until the signal warrants are met, and then a signal would be installed. The pros and cons of this option are that, again, 2 bridges would be removed, so we would not have those on our maintenance roll. There would be fewer accidents than existing. This is 4.44 fewer, so a little bit, not quite the benefit that option 1 has as far as the fewer accidents. And that's reflected, again, in the 20-year societal savings, about $1.28 million. But we would have the 4 acres of land available for park or green space. The cons of this option are that the northbound left turn lane will experience a very long delay and long queue length. For future traffic volumes, this delay is estimated at about 11 minutes. So we're kind of joking in the office that there would not be an 11-minute delay because no one would be using Woodie Seat at that point. Everyone would be going somewhere else. You'd have a 10-minute or 5-minute delay somewhere else. And again, as with option 1, Avenue B would be closed. So we'll go into the cost of this. Phase 1 is that $1.9 million roadway improvements from Avenue F to Avenue C. We have that 2-lane connection to Avenue A for approximately $4.2 million. And then the Avenue C bridge repairs would be the 1.21. And a little bit later in the conversation, I guess I should mention, we will talk about how we can phase some of this cost. This cost isn't all tomorrow. We can spread it out a little bit. And of course, Angela's here to answer all those questions for you as well. I promised her I'd throw her under the bus at least once. So.
Hey, Jessica, a quick question.
Yes.
About the Avenue C bridge. If we repair it, how many more years are we going to get out of that?
Yeah. So what we're looking at is like a 20-year, I don't want to say life, but 20 more years before we need to do anything else with it. It doesn't mean that in 20 years it has to be replaced. It kind of depends on how the structure ages. But typically when we're looking at bridge repairs, it's to get 20 more years. If we were to put a new bridge in, we're looking at a 75 to 80-year structure.
And then do we repair it again in 20 years? And
Typically,
then,
it's about every 20 years that you're looking at.
I mean, it's going to hold up if it's repaired properly.
If it's
on
repaired
down the road.
properly, that is the goal of the repairs, yes, is to get 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jessica, I got a real quick question.
Sure.
When you talk about traffic lights, I'm a traffic tech.
Yep.
Where are you putting the traffic lights here on your T intersection at?
Yeah.
You gonna put right across from the T or what?
I believe so. I don't know that that's fully been designed.
Okay.
It's just conceptual design at this point,
Okay.
but yeah.
So it's gonna be semi-actuated. I mean, you're only gonna get the calls on the coming
Yeah,
off the
that
height.
hasn't been designed
Okay.
yet, so I couldn't answer that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll move to option 3. This option will convert the Woodie Seat Freeway and Avenue A interchange into a single-lane roundabout intersection. This option also removes the Avenue A and B bridges. And based on traffic simulations, that current and future traffic I've been talking about, this option provides the best operation for both current and future traffic volumes. This option is a little bit different than probably what you have seen before. We did submit, as you well know, several times for some grant funding for an option that included a roundabout at the Woodie Seat Avenue A interchange and then Adams and Avenue A. And that price tag was a little bit higher. We didn't get that money, and so we were determining if it was still feasible to do this. And we talked to the consultant that studied this, and they said, yes, actually, the second roundabout is really needed for that future traffic. We could make one roundabout at the interchange work with current traffic volumes and some signal optimization, and the second one may never be needed. So we pared this option down to make it a little more realistic, I think, for what our financial situation is. Okay, so we'll talk about pros and cons of this. It's going to get a little wordy, so stick with me. But roundabouts are a proven safety measure that reduce the number of crashes, fatal crashes specifically, in intersections. When compared to a stop-controlled T intersection, like options 1 and 2, a single-lane roundabout has 6 conflict points, where a stop-controlled T has 9. You can see in the picture here the conflicts that you have as you're turning left, turning right, going straight, the potential conflict points. One important thing to note that you do not see in a roundabout are those crossing conflict points. Crossing conflicts are notorious for more serious crashes. It doesn't mean that you don't have roundabout or you don't have crashes with a roundabout. It's that the type of crashes you have are less severe. That's why, again, you have like the societal cost savings here that would be a little bit higher versus maybe an intersection that had different types of crashes. So those, again, like to compare the diverging and merging conflicts are less severe. And then if, like I mentioned before, with this particular option, we have the option for a second roundabout in the future to improve or maintain traffic flow through the corridor. I also want to mention that roundabouts are safer for pedestrians. Pedestrians enter and cross at a shorter distance, and they only cross one direction of traffic at a time. So if you're thinking about a traditional intersection, a four-way intersection, pedestrians are crossing two directions of traffic, coming from, cross traffic or both ways, whereas a roundabout, they're only crossing a leg for one-way traffic. And studies have shown that when roundabouts are installed in conventional intersection, pedestrian crashes decrease by 75%. This option also minimizes the delay in the queue in current traffic and future traffic, like I mentioned before. We also have the benefit of those two bridges being removed, which decreases the maintenance costs, both in the short and the long term. And we have that 4 acres available for green space. And we get all the other benefits of roundabouts, which are the reduced noise, reduced emissions, reduced vehicle speeding, and overall lower maintenance costs. The main con of this one is that Avenue B would be closed at Woodie Seat. So we'll talk about cost on this option. Again, with phase 1, the Woodie Seat improvements from Avenue F to Avenue C is the $1.9 million. The roundabout itself comes in about $4.13 million. And then there are those Avenue C bridge repairs for $1.2 million.
Jessica, I may have
Yeah.
missed it. Did you say what the actual traffic delay would be time-wise?
You know what? I don't think I said that. I have it here in the T study. Can I get back with you on that?
Just curious.
Okay.
Okay. It's lower, but how significant?
Mm-hmm.
And we can move forward and that can be found.
So the existing condition in current traffic is the delay is 29.5 seconds, and with a single lane roundabout would be 6.4 seconds.
Okay,
That's with
thank you.
existing, and future traffic is 45.5, and with the roundabout, or future traffic for existing condition would be 45.5 seconds, and then with a roundabout, the future delay would be 9 seconds.
Thank you.
Yes. I do also want to point out, because we did apply for that grant with this particular option, a cost-benefit analysis was required, and so we did for this option, and the cost-benefit ratio was a 1.87. Typically, anything over a 1 is considered a go, so this was a go. Okay, option 4 is what we're calling the no-build options, what the TEEP study called the no-build options. We're kind of plagiarizing from them a little bit. No-build does not mean do nothing. Rather, that infrastructure remains in its current configuration. I do want to note that Avenues A, B, and C bridges are over 60 years old. Their design life, when they were built, was 50. I mentioned that if we replace bridges now, we look for a 75-year design life. When they were built, maybe not the case. I have lots to say about the design of these. They were kind of unique structures when they were installed, and Kdot doesn't design them like this anymore for a reason. So we would be looking for definitely some configuration upgrades with the bridge itself, or structure upgrades with the bridges themselves, but the configuration of the roadway would be the same. Repairs to Avenue A and C bridges with this option are definitely needed, and Avenue B is at a point where we're not talking about repairs anymore, we're talking about a replacement of that bridge. And then, of course, we would do the pavement rehabilitation for the rest of, for all of Woodie Seat. So you'll see coming up that that's why that cost is a little bit higher, because we're looking from F all the way to A now. With this particular option, the vehicle safety improvements and additional pedestrian infrastructure is not included, where it's inherently included with the other options. So we'll go over some pros and cons of this. The big pro of this is that Avenue B remains unchanged, which we know is a neighborhood concern. The cons of this option are that there are no safety improvements. There are no improvements to pedestrian infrastructure, like I mentioned. We have those 2 additional bridges, Avenue B and Avenue A bridge, to maintain in perpetuity. And it does have a higher overall construction cost. So to be clear, it's a higher overall construction cost right now and a higher overall maintenance cost in the future. So we'll talk about cost. The first phase of this would be to start repairing the pavement on Woodie Seat. That would happen from Avenue F all the way to Avenue A for a price tag of over $3 million. While that's happening, we would have a consultant working on the design of Avenue B Bridge, or to replace the Avenue B Bridge. And the cost estimate for that bridge replacement right now is about $2.86 million. That's why I mentioned the Avenue C Bridge is quite a bit higher than that. It's quite a bit bigger. Avenue B Bridge is actually not as large, so we have some savings there. I guess one way to look at it. We also have some Avenue A bridge repairs for about $770,000, and then Avenue C bridge again for $1.2 million, for a total of $8 million, $8,060,000 on this option. Okay, so that concludes the options that were looked at in the TEEP study. While we were preparing for tonight, several versions of this last option were mentioned, and so we put it together. I want to clarify, and I will probably say it again, is that this option has not been studied. So the costs that we put in with this are cost estimates for what we know right now. The cost is probably a little low, considering that as we study it, we might find other things that need to happen, infrastructure upgrades that need to happen that will increase. So this option is the removal of the Woodie Seat Freeway at Avenue F. We would remove all of the bridges. Traffic would end at Avenue F. Improvements to Avenue F, Monroe, and Adams would have to occur to increase to handle the increased traffic that would now be diverted to at-grade streets. And we would likely need an improved connection to Main Street. We think that would happen at Avenue A, but again, that's not included in our cost. We haven't studied to make sure that's actually feasible yet. So we'll go over some pros and cons of this option. The pros are that we would eliminate all future infrastructure maintenance costs of these bridges immediately. There would still be maintenance, but the maintenance would be at-grade infrastructure, roadways, things like that, and across the board that's cheaper than maintaining elevated infrastructure. Major pro of this is that we don't have a closure of Avenue B. And then we would get improvements to Avenue F, Adams, and Monroe, so those roads would be a little nicer, I guess. And we have the option for a gateway entry to the city a little farther south on Main, increasing traffic to businesses farther south. One of the cons to this option is that we would have the entry to the city farther south on Main. Why is that a con? Well, farther, I believe it's Avenue C. South of Avenue C, the intersections on Main Street are just not built for that level of traffic. And so we would need to do some improvements there. Or we would see some fairly quick degradation of the streets when more people start driving there. I want to kind of compare what we're looking at right now. On Main Street, south of C, we're looking at about 2,500 vehicles a day, and Woodie Seat has over 10,000 vehicles. It's not to say all 10,000 are going to go to Main Street, but you would definitely see a substantial increase in traffic in that area, which, again, could be good, but for the roads, we would need to make some upgrades. So I guess I kind of started to say the second con is that we would be rerouting all of that traffic. So not just Main, but other surface streets would need some improvements and see that increased traffic. The next con is our railroad implications. This is probably the biggest one and would make this option, to be quite frank, a no-go. Jeff's gonna laugh at me when I say this. I've said it 7 times this week, but the city of Hutchinson does not have railroads in it. The railroads allow the city of Hutchinson to exist around them. And so we get permission from them to cross their crossings. They don't get permission from us to cross our street. And so if suddenly we have 10,000 extra vehicles a day that normally go over them, now trying to cross them, they likely would not approve that. And not only would they not approve it, they may and definitely have the authority to remove our permits to cross. They could close crossings. And that would obviously, I don't think I have to explain this anymore, would be very bad. On a safety note with railroads, I want to point out that in the state of Kansas right now, there are an average of 1.19 or 1.2 accidents for every 100,000 crossings at a railroad. If we're talking about 10,000 vehicles a day, so we're looking at about 0.12 accidents per day. That's not to say that every couple days we would have an accident in Hutchinson. It's just on average, that's what the state of Kansas is seeing. It's a little bit higher than the national average. And in Kansas, for every 100,000 vehicles that cross, you see 0.88 fatalities. So we would definitely be seeing shouldn't say it that way, but there is a chance for the increased fatalities by rerouting all the traffic at grade instead of going over. And finally, like I said before, this option has not been studied. We did have an engineer briefly review to make sure that we could get traffic from Avenue F down to grade, but that's as far as we've gone. So this needing to study this option would take a little additional time. And then after that study is completed, it might be that we find that the option doesn't work. Okay, so we'll talk about cost on this. Again, these are preliminary and just based on the improvements that we know we need. Improvements to Monroe, that'd be about $410,000. Improvements to Adams at $1.4 million. Improvements to Avenue F at $1.1, and then removing Woodie Seat at a little over $4 million. It seems pretty expensive for tearing things down, but what we were considering is removing all of the soil. You know, excavating and hauling the soil would be incredibly expensive, and it's a substantial amount. So that's, you know, the high number there for a total of $7 million that we know of.
And Jessica, does this option not include any reconstruction or upgrades to the South Main streets?
It does not. We didn't feel comfortable putting a number on that just yet until we studied how the traffic would actually, how the traffic flow would work.
It seems like that would be substantial.
It would be. It would be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So the final thoughts on the discussed options. One thing I did want to bring up was on the con of bringing the extra 10,000 into the South Main was that you're taking 10,000 off of a 4-lane road, and there's 3 different 2-lane options. And if they all favored one, I mean, even Main is 2-lane from C to A. That's a lot of vehicles to cram into 2 lanes. So that's where the study would reveal a little bit more before we can kind of get into that. So the final thoughts on the discussed options is option 1 is a T intersection at Avenue A. It's deemed not feasible due to the extremely long queue and high delay. Option 2 is the 2-lane T intersection at Avenue A. It is deemed not operationally feasible due to the extremely high delay, especially in the long term. Option 3 is the 1-lane connection with the roundabout at Avenue A, and it has the minimized delay and the increased safety. Option 4 is the no build. There's no improvements to safety, the delay, the queuing, and it has the highest cost. Option 5 is the removal of Woodie Seat after Avenue F. It hasn't been studied. It has the lowest maintenance cost for the long term, but it does have safety implications.
With that, yeah, I'll take this off again. So, we would recommend the option 3, the 1-lane connection with the roundabout at Avenue A. It does improve safety at the intersection. It can reduce the number of accidents going forward. It also can minimize traffic delays with existing and future traffic, and it also is one of reasonably lower costs for the overall construction costs, but it minimizes maintenance costs in the future due to not maintaining a couple of bridges that we already have that need some maintenance going forward. So, and it also makes this option a little more easily to kind of assimilate into our maintenance schedules, to be able to do some of the maintenance, at least the pavement portion of the projects, and not break that out as a separate project that has to be bonded or some of those types of things, aside from the bridge maintenance going forward. So aside from that, keeping the railroad, I believe it's important to keep the railroad link open where you can bypass the railroad and cross over the top going forward. It connects the north and south part of Main Street with the residents north to south also. So I think that's the best way to proceed at this time. So Jessica has a couple more things to talk about.
Okay, so we're going to talk about schedules. I'll try to make this really brief. I'm sure you guys will have additional questions as you start to discuss some of the options. It's kind of hard to see up here, I apologize, but you guys do have a schedule in your handouts that you can look at more closely. This schedule is based on us having, engineering having some kind of direction from you by the 1st of February. I want to comment that maybe a month slip in that might not seem like a big deal, but if we miss March or April, we start to miss funding opportunities that Kdot has. And if we miss those opportunities, it's a fiscal year wait. It's not a few months. So it's not to say we couldn't do the project, but we might not have input or funding available from them for that portion of it. Additionally, there are some things that have to happen in certain windows. I'll say that asphalt has a season. And if we get outside of that season, we're not waiting a couple months, we're waiting until the next season to come around to start working on that particular portion again. So if you have any questions about those types of things, we can answer those. I will try not to get too far into that. Options 1, 2, and 3 basically have the same schedule. If we get direction, the first thing that we're going to do is immediately start working on the mill and overlay of Woodie Seat from Avenue F to Avenue C. We plan for that to be in construction later this year. And when I say the project to be in construction, there are also some drainage improvements. Those can happen throughout the winter, and then that mill and overlay would happen during the asphalt season next summer. Following that, we would do the actual intersection, whether it's the T or the roundabout, depending on which option's chosen. The design, you can't see the design period here, but the design would start now, and then we would expect construction to begin late next year on those. And then finally, across the board on those 3 options for Avenue C Bridge, we would start those construction-wise in 2025 after the interchange had been complete. I'm trying to minimize how much construction is happening at the same time, keep different contractors off the top of each other, and then make it a little more palatable for Angela. Also, so that's for the first 3 options. Option 4, you can see the cost is a little bit more front-loaded. We would be working on the roadway improvements from Avenue F all the way to Avenue A, but also an immediate need are the repairs of Avenue B Bridge, and so we would start those at the same time as well. We don't feel comfortable waiting for the mill and overlay to be complete to start working on Avenue B and vice versa. When I say Avenue B, I mean the bridge, so sorry if that wasn't clear. But the Avenue B Bridge, while we're waiting on mill and overlay to be finished, and vice versa. And then once those were complete, we would go on to the Avenue A Bridge, which needs to be repaired, and then the Avenue C Bridge repairs would happen after that. Again, you see like the slightly faster completion by maybe a month or so, but the cost or the bulk of your money is happening all at once, which has some pretty serious financial implications for the city. And then the last option, I would call this an e-wag, but it's just more, it's more of just a wag. But we would start those improvements to the, Monroe first, Adams and F, and then after those improvements were made is when we would actually demolish the freeway. We would want the roads improved before we started rerouting all that traffic. So it's just a brief schedule overview. Now we'd like to open it up for questions from you for more discussion.
First of all, I'd like to commend you guys. I think you did a real good job so far on what I see. It's a lot to take in. This is a big thing for Hutchinson right now, so I really don't have any comment. I'd really like to see what the citizens have to say myself.
I did have a few questions. I wondered when this was so generously gifted to us by Kdot, did that come with any promise of future funding for maintenance?
KDOT typically, when they hand over, negotiates their funding up front. And then
Okay.
when, at the time of the transfer, they do all of the upgrades they promise. Sometimes they does come with a little bit of money. I know that the county has received, been gifted Highway 14.
Yeah.
And they came with some funding for some failing infrastructure that they knew was under the road and some bridge improvements that needed to be done. So they did some improvements to Avenue F and Avenue D bridges, as well as like a mill and overlay and some different options that they did. But yeah, there isn't any promise once it is handed over.
Okay, thank you. And then on the financing of whichever option we choose, would that be bonded over 3 years or 4 years?
It depends on which option we choose, and it depends
Okay.
on what, I guess, ultimately you guys suggest. Angela can probably talk to that. There is a tab in your handout that shows spending projections, and what we've done is just take our kind of narrow view of this and guess, I say guess, we've projected, I shouldn't be a guess, we projected how this would be spent based on when construction needs to happen. So we've moved, design fees in 1 year, construction for one thing, and design of the next in another year. And then you can see with that $6 million general bond capacity that we have, how much is left for that year with everything that needs to happen. So,
Okay.
And that is on the schedules tab right behind the pull-out schedule.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't be annihilating our CIP.
on a couple of the options, it'd be pretty close.
Okay.
To be clear, though, this is without any outside funding. There are a few funding opportunities. It's probably a question you're going to ask. Which opportunities will be allowed to go after or be eligible for, depend on which option we pick.
Okay. What are the assumptions being made in the future traffic calculations? Why are those so much higher? I mean, are we going to explode in population? What kind of assumptions are being made?
Yeah. I don't know. Sorry. You can go ahead.
I think, well, they typically model things with an increase in traffic so we can have an idea. So if something does happen or there's some development does start, they figure that in. Traffic projections are a tricky slope to go on. Though if you look at the city of Hutchinson, we've been pretty stable for the last 40 or 50 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that was my.
So most likely we would see stable traffic going forward.
Okay.
It's important to note too, though, that traffic patterns they're based on human behavior. If the intersection is improved, I'm not saying this one specifically, but say a certain area is improved, more people might like that intersection, and now they're coming and driving that way instead of a different way because it's easier to get through. They don't have to sit and wait at a stoplight, for example.
Induced demand.
Those are
Yeah.
some of the other things that, while we might not be growing or more businesses might not be opening, I mean, certainly those are things that we hope for and are planning for. There are other things that go into that, like
Yeah.
human behavior.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The other question I had is, do you have projections of the differences in costs between long-term maintenance of the structures kind of as they are, that option 4, I believe, versus like an option 3? We know those are significant, but do we have any projections?
He has it. Switch pages.
Well, while you're looking at that, I had one more, and is on the option 3, is there any way that can be designed to avoid the closure of B? And could you walk through why not, if so?
No. I think on the first slide that I went through, I showed the different grades. See
Yeah.
if I can go back to it here. Almost. Here we go. So right here, this dashed line, and then up here, this is the bridge to over Avenue B. Is that correct? Yeah.
This is the gap.
Yeah. And to A. And in order to get, over here is Avenue C, in order to get from this elevation at Avenue C down to Avenue A, the bridge at Avenue B needs to be removed. The minute that you clear the railroads at Avenue C, you have to start coming down. And so with this configuration, no, there's not a way to avoid that,
Okay.
that closure.
Can you walk us through how pedestrian traffic would be rerouted, or even, well, I guess any kind of traffic would be rerouted when B is closed? Like, how would we help alleviate that huge inconvenience for the neighborhood?
I guess I can speak to pedestrian. Are you talking about during construction or just once it's closed?
Just once it's closed, because
Okay,
it's a permanent
yeah.
closure, right?
So they would have an option. They could either go north to Avenue A to get to the east. If they're going west, obviously the closure there is not the issue. But to go east, they could go north to Avenue A and through, or they could go south to Avenue C. It's about a 0.2 mile detour. to choose either of those options. That's for vehicular traffic. If you're a pedestrian, you can sort of see in this, these little white lines right here are new sidewalks.
Okay.
I know one of the comments, at least at the last community meeting that we had, was safety for pedestrians going up to A because there's more traffic up there. They might not want to send their children up there. Understand that. And so we have added the sidewalks going down to C. It's the same distance and a different option, obviously a lot less traffic that direction.
And then we have the option to repair C Street going.
That's a good question.
East.
It's definitely something we want to look into. I will say that road is very close to railroad right of way.
Yeah.
And so we might be very limited what we can do there. We might be able to do surface improvements. We might not be able to do alignment improvements. It's something that we need to look at and certainly will if that's what we're directed to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Jessica, what's the grade going to be on B Street? How much dirt will still be there?
Go back to this. You can see for reference, it would be about 11 feet lower than what it is right now.
And what is it now? I can't. I don't have that
honestly
graphic.
cannot see that. I don't know the 23 feet. Yeah,
Yeah.
about 23 feet.
So it'll be about 10.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just curious. I'm just thinking of possibly a way for pedestrian to still use B Street and not close it for pedestrian use. I'm just seeing if there's enough room to do something. I don't know the cost implications, or if that's even possible.
I wasn't here when the pedestrian bridge was put on 30th, but I've heard that that cost over $1 million, and that's to cross traffic at grade. The Woodie Seat traffic would be approximately 12 to 15 feet higher than Avenue B. So that pedestrian bridge to get over it would be quite giant.
Is there an option to go under it?
That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking. That's why I asked how much dirt.
Yeah. Yes, you can build a tunnel. Do you want the cost of that? We haven't studied the cost or put an estimate to that, what it would take to do that.
Would it be much different than a large box culvert, basically, in design?
It would be a very expensive box culvert, yeah. I know Sarah had brought that up at a previous meeting, and it was, pinged back and forth a little bit. There were some concerns about safety and maintenance of that. It's not a bridge, but it's a tunnel now, so we would still need to maintain that. So there would be some costs associated with that as well.
Next question, is there going to be fencing, shielding if we delete Avenue B bridge? Will there be some sort of, because it's going to be almost down, right next to people's houses?
Those types of things haven't been decided yet. This is conceptual design. If this option were chosen, we got into final design, we'd definitely be open to any and all suggestions about features like that, for sure.
At least screening and those types of things, for
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, to be fair, the railroad requires it. If you look at Avenue C, there's a funny fence on that bridge for just a certain length, and that's because the railroad requires it. So that fence is from their right-of-way to their right-of-way. So I guess to get to the point, yes, it's possible that we could do that. They do.
I guess back to discussing ending the Woodie Seat at F Street. I need to understand the railroad. We have to let the railroad know that we will have more traffic coming across their crossing. Is that correct? Did I hear it
Paul should
right?
probably answer this one.
There, and certainly those who have been on the council any length of time knows that you can't make the railroad do anything it doesn't want to do. If they are agreeable, great. If they're not agreeable, you can't do anything about it. And so you have crossings. It is their right of way. And if the traffic becomes too much of a concern for some of those locations, yeah, they could close it.
Is it the same rail company for C and D? Is it operated by the same rail or serviced
No.
by
I
the
don't
same?
think so.
We
So
have
we'd have-
several rail companies in Hutchinson, and they're, I believe, BNSF and UP are both in that K&O
Yeah.
as
So
well.
we'd be
That's a
working
short
with more
line,
than
too.
one
Oh,
for
yes.
permission?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
It really is astounding, the power they wield.
Well, they're under federal jurisdiction is why we can't, they're not completely uncooperative, but they're pretty strict.
Yeah.
And we've actually achieved a little bit of progress with them on at least one bridge. But that's all I've ever seen since I've been here.
I'll say the railroad is always, I shouldn't say always, but the railroad calls to ask if we can close crossings in town, not if we can increase traffic at
I
them.
see. I know that because of the railroad, costs were significantly increased for the bridge on 43rd in the county, so.
And that's part of what that cost for the Avenue C bridge replacement, that's why it's so high. In fact, our estimate comes with a giant caveat that the cost could be even higher than that depending on railroad cooperation and what kind of requirements they may have. We heard a story from one of our bridge consultants that a railroad wouldn't allow Kdot to do a repair project over their railroad. It's like, you have to repair the bridge, and they were not really playing ball. So it makes things expensive and difficult for sure.
Yeah, we're experiencing that with the Cow Creek project right now, aren't we? Are there further questions before we open it up to public comment?
I do have a few
Okay.
questions. In your budget costs over the next few years, is it taking into account possible inflation or construction cost increases? Or is that based on current cost projections? Is there some wiggle room in there to account for cost increases over the next few years?
It depends on the phases. Some of the ones that we did put on the one actually we project to start next year, which would be like the mill and overlay. We put a little bit of inflation in that. I know that the engineer put a little bit of a contingency in the bridges to try and make sure that we could cover for inflation, because obviously the longer we push them out, the more inflation happens, and then the higher the prices are going to drive for all of anything we do.
On the TEEP study, did it delineate between commercial versus non-commercial traffic on our traffic counts coming through there, or give any kind of estimate on commercial versus non-commercial? Is the plan to reroute or tell signage for commercial traffic to exit on F versus going forward, to try to avoid as much commercial traffic going through Roundabout or through any of these other options?
I believe the TEEP study mentioned that Avenue A would not become a truck route, if that's what you're asking.
That's kind of where I'm
We
going with
can't
it.
direct them to not use it, but we can have it not labeled that way so that it's not seen as a place for them to naturally go.
Did the TEEP study offer any alternative like you could expect this kind of traffic increase on South Main Bridge versus this one?
It really only dealt with the intersection at Avenue A and
Okay.
Woodie Seat.
I mean,
It did though make the roundabout upsizing so that trucks could pass if
Okay.
needed. So it's not that they can't go there at all. But
with the options that keep the bridges in place, or at least offer an exit from Avenue F going north, just to get over the railroad tracks, I would be more concerned with allowing emergency services personnel, because the other route, I believe the closest route would be if the train was sitting in town, is to go 61 Highway
Yeah.
to get over the bridge. Just sounding an idea out and sounding somewhat crazy saying this, if we were to take out the on-ramp on Avenue F going north, but put a signal that's a traffic signal on Woodie Seat that's only used during emergency situations to shut it down, to allow fire and emergency personnel to go up the off ramp during just those situations where there's a train, to allow them to control that signal, would that offer, off the cuff here, any savings getting rid of those two ramps?
not 100%
Or
sure.
am I just being crazy?
Here, let's see.
Okay.
I'm trying
Because
to.
I'm willing to be crazy.
I don't know if we're following you quite.
Okay, so Avenue F, you've got 2 ramps that hardly get used. Basically, they're only used to get around the trains.
Oh,
To get to Avenue A from Avenue F.
I've
Those
used
are
those
the only
twice
reason
or
to have
3
those
times
ramps.
this year, this week.
Well,
So-
right.
But
But
no.
it's a convenience for people that live in the area trying to get around the trains. I understand that. If those ramps aren't there, is there any kind of savings? Because then the only thing we're concerned about is emergency services getting over. Because it used to be long before I was around. This was not 96 highway, and at one point, commercial traffic exited on F to get to South Main and get to all the businesses on South Main. I don't see a reason why we shouldn't try to route traffic that way again. And people also have it. It's a habit that it used to be 96 highway. I still take this route into town versus other routes. I think there's a lot of people that live in town that would easily go Airport Road if they're traveling from Wichita, if it was 1 minute more inconvenient here. That live on, they're at different areas of town if their destination's not local to this spot. I'm thinking.
Yeah, there's, and then, I mean, you'll lose also the access for South Hutch people coming into town to go to work, which is a large part of South Hutch.
And the South Main Bridge isn't a bad bridge as far as I'm
No,
concerned.
but you have all the train delays and everything else that I'm saying that
You still have that.
And the people that leave, I know back when I lived on the west side, on Adams up north, it was significantly quicker for me to cut down this way if I was going to Wichita than it was to drive all the way through town to get to. I mean, again, it's a habit thing.
Right.
So I understand what you're saying, but
Are there any other capital improvement projects that are either on our wish list or our plan in the next year or two that require a large amount of dirt? If it's a significant cost
Required.
that require a large amount of dirt, if it's a significant cost to get rid of it, then we have
We
other
have
projects that need it.
We have places that where you can get rid, we have, like if we ever do the Cow Creek, as we get closer to construction for Cow Creek, but that's not taking dirt, that's getting rid of dirt also, so
Okay,
that,
all right.
So, just to be clear, is your question about doing option 5 but not demolishing Woodie Seat? Keeping it there if we wanted to use it or something?
I'm thinking of any option
Yeah.
at this point.
I guess there are several
recognizing-
variations of this that we could do. All of them would cost something different. It would take a study for us to really understand
The
what
big bottleneck,
what is possible and what it's going to do to traffic.
the big bottleneck being the railroad situation.
It really is, yeah. If we wanted to save a little bit on that demo cost, you don't have to remove all the dirt. You could just remove the bridges so that they don't continue to deteriorate and fall down. It's really what you want to look at.
but then we would have a maintenance cost because we'd have to mow all those
We'd have to
hills
mow the grass, or the city would maintain that.
Oh, I've asked plenty of questions. I'm good.
Can we discuss the grant opportunities
Yeah.
before we
Sure.
discuss, before we
Yeah.
hear from the audience? I need more information.
Well, I'm assuming that you're going to want us to talk about that first. Let me get to a slide. I think we have one here. Okay. In the back of your packet, there are a few things that we laid out. Kdot has several different funding opportunities. All of these are competitive. Some of them we have a better chance at, some of them not so much. The first one listed here is Kdot's cost share. This is anywhere from $35,000 to $1 million per project. There's a 15% local match required. Obviously, if we did this for one of our bigger cost items, we easily have that 15%, so no worries there. But these are very competitive.
we did get it on
We did get it for Apple Lane. We don't, it doesn't mean that because we got it for that project, we would get it for other ones. Because it's Kdot, I will say that Kdot would like to see this money going towards the option they recommended. We would have a better chance of getting this money if we did the roundabout option. If we went with the T intersection, Kdot deemed in their TEEP study that the T intersection was not preferred, so it's likely that they wouldn't want to use their money to fund the option that they don't want. Just something to keep in mind. I can't say for sure that's the case until we would apply. But we need a project to apply. We can't just throw it at the wall and see if it sticks. We actually have to have a project for this particular funding option.
And when you say that it's very competitive, what is the entire bucket of state funding, and is that a rolling application period?
So
Go ahead.
that one, it actually allows you to apply twice a year.
Okay.
They could, well, yeah, but your application will roll for a period of time. At least this is the last time I was discussing all the options with them. So you can apply, say, I think, I'd have to pull this up. I believe it's the next application is in April.
It's March or April, but I guess your question is like, how much do they have available?
Yeah.
It depends on the year. Each year when they put out a call for projects, they usually say how much they have available that year. It doesn't mean they're giving it all out. They might not. They might save some of it. Actually, like Jeff was saying, they have a call in the fall as well. So in the spring, they're going to fund their top priority projects or the ones they like the most, that are, you know, the best projects that they see. And then with whatever money is left over at the end of the year, they'll have another call. And then there's, you know, another chance to get funding in the fall. But so we'll know in March or April, whenever they send that out, how much is available.
Okay.
But as far as we're concerned, it's $1 million maximum per project. Outside of the cost share, there are transportation alternative grants. I think the Parks Department uses these quite a bit. These are for sidewalks, bike paths, pedestrian infrastructure like bicycle lanes. Washington Boulevard, or the bicycle boulevard on Washington, is using a transportation alternative grant. These are very competitive. About 20% of the people that apply actually get funding on these. We could try and go after some of this money for some of the pedestrian infrastructure, some of the green space improvements, things like that with this. The Safe Routes to School is also part of this transportation alternative program. It's kind of like a sub-program within the TA program that highlights sidewalks from neighborhoods to schools where there are a high concentration of pedestrians.
Do they often combine? I mean, you probably couldn't get both.
It depends on the program. Kdot is very clear that if you are eligible for certain bridge programs, you cannot, well, you can't, they likely will not fund your project if you apply for cost share.
Okay.
So even being eligible for one of the bridge programs kind of pushes you out of the running for cost share. So if we're looking at, say, the Woodie Seat B bridge replacement, it is eligible for one of those bridge programs. And what's unfortunate about it is that the maximum amount for that particular bridge grant is about $100,000. And because we're eligible for that little bit of money, we can't go for the $1 million. I shouldn't say we can't. It's unlikely that we would, get it for that. So it kind of gets complicated based on which option you pick.
Is it going to take a year to get the money? We have to wait a year after we apply for it?
No, Kdot is pretty fast. Jeff can probably say how long it usually takes. Usually with the for the cost share, I'm not sure about transportation alternative program, but I know for the bridge programs, you usually apply and then you hear something within a month or two. I think cost share is similar to that.
So all of these bridge programs, the off system, et cetera, we wouldn't necessarily be that interested in because it's not going to provide much.
It depends on the option. If we go through one of the options for option 1 through 3, we're obviously getting rid of our worst bridges. Some of these bridge programs require the bridges to be in pretty bad condition to be able to get the funding. We've applied for bridges in our city that are in bad condition and we didn't get funding for them. Even after we talked to Kdot and they said, oh, wow, we never have bridges that bad. You should apply.
Yeah.
And then we did, and we didn't get the money.
Yeah.
So that's definitely kind of frustrating on our part. But
Well, and sometimes, like, you may not be interested, but it's part of a larger project. You may have to pull the bridge that was eligible for one of those out, apply for that, less whatever, for that because you can't apply for the cost share for that bridge.
I
So you have
see.
to pull that out of the cost of the project and then apply for cost share for the rest of the project. And then, yeah.
it kind of becomes a bookkeeping nightmare. for
Bureaucracy
us
at its
and,
best.
and maybe Angela too a little bit. It's not to say it's impossible, but it could be difficult, and you're not guaranteed that by pulling that bridge out, getting funding for it, that now you're suddenly going to be eligible for cost share or even get the cost share.
Yeah. Do you have sufficient guidance yet on the federal infrastructure bill and what process that will, I mean, that money, is that money coming to the states? Is that awarded competitively
Yeah.
through the state?
Actually, yes, the state of Kansas, and I have it. I talked to the state of Kansas today, and yes, the state of Kansas is going to receive $225 million, and they got notified of that last Friday. Right now, they're in the process of reading through their requirements, what the federal government's requirements are for the states, and in the next year, or probably 6 to 10 months, they'll be putting together the rules that are associated with those. And actually, some of the money is to go to bridges. They have certain percentages. I don't know what the percentages are, but it does go to bridges for off-system bridge projects. Also, it could be on bridges that are rated poor, which would be the Avenue B bridge, or even fair rated bridges, which are the Avenue A and the Avenue C bridges. That'll be somewhat competitive because there's quite a number of bridges throughout the state that are in these conditions. I'm not sure what the application guidelines are going to be. They don't even know that yet. So they just got essentially notified and put that information out within the last 3 or 4 days. So.
And that's going to be administered through Kdot? It's not going to be like an ARPA situation where each city gets money based on population?
I believe it's going to be through Kdot, actually administered. So, but there is some good news, at least that some of the off-system bridges, which would be our Woodie seat bridges or other bridges within the community, that we could capture some funds going forward. I don't know if it would be for Woodie seat, but it could be for some of the other ones that we have in the same boat that need work. So.
Okay, thank you. Further comments or questions before we hear from the audience? Someone mind handing me the sheet? Oh, thank you so much. For some reason, I thought Linda was going to be here.
Do we have to wait for the order of that? Or
Yes.
can I write off the funding real quick?
Pardon me? We're going to go in the order that people signed up. Mhm.
There's a couple across the name.
Okay. Wonder- 611 West Sherman.
601 West Sherman.
Or 601, okay. Would you like to say a few words, Cecilia? Thank you.
Well, thank you for all the information tonight. It's really helped out quite a bit. You've opened my eyes to quite a bit here, and it's been a lot of information to absorb. I tried my hardest to listen to everything. There are still some things that I would like to get clarified, and I heard on the last meeting that Jade had said something about maybe having ongoing meetings and to get input from the community. I would like to see that happen. I think that would be great, because if that was a lot of information for me to absorb, then we can inform a lot more of our residents in this area, and maybe they will come to light and see things more clearly like I have today. There's some questions that we'd like to see. The city manager and independent contractors, we'd like to know where the exact figures are coming from. Is it those two independent contractors or the city engineers? Apparently, they've done their work and they did a pretty good job of giving us estimates tonight. They got my information that I would wanted to hear about the demo and the upkeep. Those figures have come to light, so that's been very helpful. one thing that I would like to know is why didn't we get this last grant? That I don't think has ever been discussed, or told us, or told anybody of why it wasn't approved.
I would
So
like to know that
I'd like
too.
to know that.
We haven't got any notification of why we haven't yet at this point, but just this week, we got an email from the Department of Transportation, and we sign up for debriefs. So I signed up for a debrief, so they said within 6 to 8 weeks, we'll get a debrief on why or why not we didn't get grant funding, so.
Did they
that-
ever indicate that it had anything to do with our design?
On the debriefs that we've had in the past, they always have indicated that it was in the bucket to be funded, but then it goes to the higher ups, and then those get selected at those points. So they always have more that are eligible to be funded than they have funding in the past. So, in our debriefs in the past, they said there's not much you need to change with your application. It's just one that didn't get selected at this time.
And just to add to that as well, since we're talking about it, one of the things that happened after, it wasn't 2021, I guess it would have been the 2020 application period and selection cycle. There were some independent engineering firms that did a review on where the funding went, and it was not a popular topic. It was an election year, and it was noted unanimously and nonpartisan, a nonpartisan group that did this research found that funding went to states where the current administration was looking for support. And now we have a new administration, and things swing a different direction. I'm not saying that's the only thing that goes into that. Obviously, there are a lot of factors, and like Jeff said, ours got to the very top, and then in that bucket, we just weren't picked. And there's quite the possibility, and like I said, it's been noted by several people that these grant applications are highly politicized, and unfortunately, we just didn't make the cut this time. So with the future infrastructure funding, if there are more grant opportunities coming from the federal government, I think we could probably expect to see that as well.
Okay. Need to politic a little bit. Okay. Thank you for explaining that.
Another thing that I'd like to know is where the boundaries start on the bridge, where they start at. That's something we'd like to look into and find out where that is.
Can
You answered my
answer
questions.
that, Jessica or Jeff? Do you have the answer to Cecilia's question, or is that something you need to look into?
Are you talking right away or I'm not exactly sure.
The boundaries as far as well, for one, I'd like to know who, like South Hutch Bridge, it's Frank Hart Bridge. Is that following our boundaries, or is a different one? Okay. That was one of our questions, my question. And then another question I'd like to know, and I think you kind of answered that tonight, was if repairs could just be brought up to code for right now. Because I would really like to see more meetings, more discussion, because tonight you've opened my eyes to a new one, and I am looking at one real clearly, and that's number 5. The plan that you have for number 5, the removal of Woodie seat on Avenue F. That has brought in, because you were talking about earlier how it would be a new way to reroute and bring more area and traffic through the south part of town, which I think has been in a lot of repair. We can show off, we got a beautiful park that we can be, someone will be noticing that if we reroute the traffic area. And to me, that phase, number 5, I think that would be you've opened my eyes to that one and got my attention on that one. I think it looks like it's gonna cost more, but yet at the same time, we're hitting a lot of aspects of our area. We're hitting the south side, we're gonna be using more traffic to flow through the city, the whole city, from south to north end. So again, I'm really looking forward, and I hope you come to a consensus to where we can have more meetings so we can discuss this further. You've opened my ears, like I said, very, very wide. I'm interested now more into some of the discussion we had tonight. I think it would be more beneficial to our citizens, to our council members, to where we could all come down. And it all boils down to, and I've been saying this from the first meeting that I've attended, it all really depends on not just your input, because you guys are being our leaders. You're showing us by example. And by example is by you opening your ears and listening to our inputs also. Very, very, very important. Not just for us here on the southwest side, but for all of our citizens in the city. So that way they can know that we can count on you to represent us, not you representing just a certain group. I think that would be very, very beneficial. Please take that into consideration. Let us all come to the table and discuss and hear our voices.
Yeah.
And let us come to a consensus. Thank you.
very much. I do know that at our last council meeting, we discussed how best to meet with that neighborhood. And you mentioned that Southwest Bricktown meetings, are those monthly?
Those are monthly. There's a year-end wrap-up meeting Monday night. I've been going to those meetings since probably July or August, and I actually enjoy it. We get to talk a lot about these things, and hopefully we can use that to communicate. And I don't know
A lot
that.
of discussion going on, and everybody gets their voices heard and input, and it's just been a very communicating way of getting together as a city, not just Southwest Bricktown,
Mhm.
as a city.
Is that relatively well attended? Would it be a good venue to present these options, or would that infringe on the agenda that's already?
It might kind of overtake some of the discussions, but I think that
Because
you
we could
know,
have a separate meeting, I'm just
it's
trying to-
super flexible with their meetings. I mean, I don't think there's a lot going on right now. Cinco de Mayo's coming up and those sorts of things. So, I mean, I think that's a great way to get a few more people involved in those meetings.
It's an open meeting.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
Well, I think we need to schedule something within a month,
Mhm.
within the next few weeks, because you really want for grants, we need an answer by beginning of February, right? Or
It would be March.
March. So we still have all of February if we wanted to conduct neighborhood meetings, or at least probably second meeting
Probably the second,
in.
yeah, in February. That would give us enough time to actually start sending out, because then we got.
Because again, for the cost share specifically, which is that up to $1 million, we have to have a project. So we would need to know, not just know what we're doing, but engineering would need time to put that project together and scope it and then send off the application.
Okay, so we're looking at, and unfortunately, the third Tuesday in February is the earliest it could be, which is the 15th. So we would need a decision by the 15th, or to make a decision at our February 15th meeting.
It's beneficial. The problem is we start getting, because with the cost share grant, you do have to give them exact timelines. Like, we will have it designed by this date. We'll have our field check to you by this date, our office check to you by this date. Design will be completed. We're going to have it bid on this date, and construction will start by this date. And if you miss those windows, they pull your share.
So
If you get
okay.
it.
And is that the grant that you said we should hear back within a month if we receive it? So we would be able
Month
to
or two.
factor that into our CIP for the upcoming year, if we were to receive it?
It would be the next fiscal year that we would get it for.
Oh,
I believe that this one is, I'd have to call and verify. Yeah, I don't think it would start in July of 22. I think it would start in July of 23.
okay.
Which would make sense for design, and then construction would start in that period. We'd still be designing it now.
Okay.
So how long did you say we're gonna need? Because I'm concerned about, I've been trying to get the southeast center, try to get organized. I'm trying to get with the rec commission to get that organized.
Mhm.
I've yet to get that done because I got a lot of Southwest, we need to sit down. There's a church that we have met at, but I'm having problems getting everybody to know. I've had 2 meetings, but it's hard to get out to everybody.
Yeah.
So some way I can get with the rec committee. He said he would help me to get it out to all the Southwest. I hate to put us in parts. We're all one. We're all one city. So I'd like to get the Southwest, the Southeast, excuse me, where I represent, and I want to get everybody together to let them know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, that's certainly has merit. I just want to make sure that the people who live closest to the bridges have the opportunity to hear about the options. I know I know that opportunity exists today in this meeting, but if they weren't able to come, if we could come to them before that time, so we can maybe work with you, Greg, to get something set up, and Steve to kind of get your folks
Well, I
over
know
there.
I've talked to the gentleman who does the community meetings for us, Adam. And I guess this is time for me to really push Adam to get Southeast. And I don't know, is Lincoln organized yet? Do you know?
I think
Me,
they're
yes,
all
yeah.
working on it.
Okay.
I haven't heard anything from Lincoln for quite some time. But correct me if I'm wrong. I thought you heard you say there were other grants. I mean, I'm not trying. I really do think we need to wait on this decision until we have further meetings. For one, we've been putting this on a back burner for quite some time. I know there's critical work that needs to be done to our bridges. I know there's things that are needing to happen to really fast. But if we've waited this long, we can wait a little bit longer till we have our community input. That's how I feel. In order to get everybody on the same bandwagon, I think it's worth the wait. It's worth the wait. And if there's other grants out there, then who's to say what can be available and what we can get? I'm willing to do that.
I certainly
For
am
that.
too, Cece, but do you think that we would ever get a consensus with the majority of the folks down there? I mean, because you get more than two people in a room and usually there's a disagreement.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're going to always have that, I think. But I think the more open we are and with laying out the plans, I think we will have more open minds. You've sure opened my mind this evening with the plan number 5, because I thought, well, gosh, that sounds awfully darn good, but yeah, I'm sure somebody's going to stand up to me and say, no, I don't go for that. That's always going to happen. But if you can get 20 people in a room and you can get 17 people to agree with you and have the rest say, oh, no, that's always going to happen. But that number has increased to where you have more voices, more input, more agreeing. It's, to me, it's just not going to hurt. Let's be open. Let's be open about it. Let's be honest about it. Let them speak.
Well, I appreciate your leadership down there
So-
and others, and definitely going to listen. I guess my question to the engineers in the room, how can we study the option 5 more? I mean, what are we looking at? And Paul, I'm not discounting anything you said about the railroad. I've listened to it
that's
on the
fine.
Cow Creek
Yeah.
flood thing.
That's the
for
only thing that's
a year.
holding me back is that part, is the railroad. Because I went against the railroad BCF on my side of town to try to clean up the area from Decker Madison to 5th Street.
Oh,
It's an eyesore.
Yeah.
I called them and called them and called them and called them, and they finally removed some debris, but it still looks like an eyesore. But yeah, so I know what that entails, because I've dealt with them and danced with them on several occasions. But that would be the only downfall.
yeah, and I wonder if we could do something as simple as making a phone call and seeing if there might be any thought that, yeah, we'd consider that, I don't know.
I think
Only one concern I have is, what is it, right now we got a hole, right now we got to fix, right? Is that hole, we fixed that hole, is that going to take care of it for a year, half a year, or what, are we going to have?
so. We do actually have some slides
Okay.
when I went up and evaluated it. So here's the abutment. When I walked up the riprap or the slope there, you can see that it was washed out underneath the abutment. You can see that it goes back under, and then from there it came up to this hole that fell 7 feet. It was a 7-foot deep hole. It wasn't tiny. The problem is let's see if I got the laser pointer here. Yeah, is this right here is actually the concrete. When they hit it with the hammer, it just fell into dust. So yes, when we flowable fill this area, because we have to excavate it all out, flowable fill it. Our consultant came in and evaluated it. We did bring in a structural engineer, and he said it is a good couple-year fix. To do an appropriate fix, we're looking at a couple $100,000 on a bridge that is due for repair replacement within 2 years. For this one problem. Showing though with that 2 locations had that concrete in that condition.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know. I can't speak with any certainty that isn't scattered in other
Right.
locations near any other bridges. That this won't happen several other times. We know we have the cancers on the Avenue B bridge. You had brought up the study, like if we started looking at a feasibility study on potentially doing the removal option number 5. One downside is we would have to, the study's going to take time. I mean, we have to get in, we have to send out RFQs, we have to pick a consultant, then they'll
At least a year. If you're looking for a time, it would at least take a year.
at least for just the study, and that's counting just the initial feasibility study. There could be more studies beyond that, including more like railroad meetings or actually design build cost studies to determine, like, maybe it ends up being that it's a $15-20 million project and we're like, oh hey, we can't even begin to do this, so let's go ahead, even though we just spent $300,000 on this study, we have to access. So I mean, there's pros and cons. It's a very moving piece, but the study's going to take a year. If this bridge, like I said, we're putting a 2.5 year fix on it. Again, it doesn't mean that we can't do that. It just means that we're pushing this bridge really close to that timeline of not being in a
Having
good
to do
place.
something else.
I just want to be sure that we're forward thinking on this, and there are some benefits to option 5, in my opinion, for that neighborhood specifically.
It sounds to me like option 5 is going to be dictated by the railroad and or possibly emergency response times too.
Exactly. We haven't even really talked about that, and I haven't talked to Chief Beer about that.
Right, because you have Chief Beer and then Chief Hooper and then the EMS response times. I don't know what that would do for the hospital accessing the west side of town. I don't know all of those.
That would all be studied.
Right, that would all be part of the study.
Well, and I would think there's no point of even moving forward with the study if it's a really hard no from multiple rail companies too.
Correct.
I mean, we're going to be fighting an uphill battle just to learn that we can't even do it.
But you're not gonna know until you ask.
Exactly. It doesn't hurt to call and be real nice and pretty please and thank you and find out information, and then call someone else if you get the wrong answer you don't like and see if you can talk them into giving you the answer you want. But we might as well, that's an easy, cheap, low risk, low effort to even know if it's an option.
And frankly, I had no idea that would be an issue, that pushing more traffic through a different crossing.
We didn't either until we had our consultant do a quick look at it, and when they were looking to just see if they could get the traffic down to Avenue F, that's when he called and said, hey, you can get this down, but looking down the road.
And they even called some people at Kdot that work with the railroads on projects, like when a new bridge is going to go cross a railroad or an existing bridge is being repaired that crosses a railroad. They talked to those folks at Kdot, said, hey, have you ever had this scenario where instead of building the bridge or repairing the bridge, you tear it down and put it at grade? And Kdot kind of laughed and said, no one does that. So it's just letting you know that it's not something that's common at all here.
I'm okay with not being common.
Yeah.
We know there's a problem at Avenue B. I'm not an engineer. I didn't spend the night at Holiday Inn. And I've looked under the bridge at Avenue B, and it's terrible. I mean, it's getting to the point. I mean, I'm more worried about concrete falling on somebody walking under it.
Well, I believe Steve was here when we had to go and knock concrete off the bottom of the bridge, which is a bad sign when you have to send crews over there to do that. And it's getting almost to the point, right now it's all spalling and starting to fall. I don't have that picture. But right now it's all over that kind of that concrete slope. It has some, so if it falls, it may slide into something, but it's not directly over the vehicles and the sidewalks like it was last time we had to go knock it off.
Well, I don't want no way we do this right. We let the people know, and we need to sit down and talk. And people don't really want to hear what I'm going to have to say of this one. I have thought about just closing it all off. Don't spend no more money. Just close it off and make the traffic go other ways until we decide what we're going to do. I mean, we're just going to spend money here, and we want to make sure we're going the right way, and we have the citizens' input. I mean, everybody. South Brick, everybody's input about this, and make sure we show the citizens that we are representing them. And we have a new council, and I think we're going to do it right this time and get it done. But I think and he's right, I was there. I used to bring my bucket truck under those bridges and be the one with the helmet on, making the concrete fall. I mean, I remember those days. But I think we need to have meetings and get a chance so we can organize these meetings, Mayor. See how we can set up to get everybody to know what's going on. And like you said at the last meeting, we got to get the public to trust us. And this is one way to get started, getting trust in us. So
we'll get at least one meeting scheduled in the southwest Bricktown area before mid-February. My concern on that 5, I've got a few concerns on that option 5, and I know that your ability to answer questions is limited in light of not having a study. But when you push more traffic to South Main, could be a good thing, like you said. Wouldn't that cause traffic backups if you're having 10,000 more vehicles along that very narrow corridor?
Right, and that's definitely going to be part of the study, because they'll have to evaluate whether we could even, that one corridor could withhandle it. Now granted, if you start backing traffic up a whole lot, then they're going to eventually try and find other ways, which may cause more upgrades needed further to either take them further east, or there are maybe other things that pop up like that.
I would make an argument I think there's an argument to be said that locals would find it different. I would go a different route.
True, yeah.
And not just for personal, but also for my business traffic going in and out of town. I would go 96 Highway off of 4th, or I'd go 50 out to Airport Road and head southeast.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there'd be a lot of people that would just adjust. It's going to be the people that are coming in from out of town that are going to be looking at either the South Main Bridge or coming in off the Woodie Seat area.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a tough thing to figure out in the study.
Yeah.
You're not pulling someone as they're driving into town. Where are you going? How would you do this if it was closed north of Avenue F?
Mm-hmm. Would trucks would be driving along?
I really think trying to divert as much commercial traffic onto F is going to be the way to go no matter what, or guiding them onto South Main, especially, Tyson and Kraus and some of these other businesses. But habits, and habits will form during construction. A lot of this is going to be shut down during the construction process.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
There's one shortcut.
So
How did we allow this to get this bad anyway over the years?
if somebody wants, actually, pardon me, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just realized I wasn't going by the list, and there is a Terry Bisbee is the other person on the list who has not yet spoken. And if others want to sign up, I'll go ahead and put that there.
Thank you, but I think I'll pass at this point. I think the engineering department did a great job.
Okay. And sir, did you want to come up to the podium and speak?
No, I was just kind of curious of the fact that, is this city property, or is this a city problem or a county problem? Because if this was city, I didn't understand how this would get, how we would allow this to get this bad anyway, before it gets to this point when, where I was understood at one time that we paid, 10% on sales tax. And I understand that 4% of it was supposed to be going on roads and things like that. So over the years, I want to know how come that hadn't been repaired, if we've been, if we've been taking, we've been using funds for roads and things like that. And then I also had another question I had to ask.
Yeah, if you go ahead and come up to the podium, because this meeting's
Okay.
being streamed
I'm
and
sorry.
nobody can hear your
I'm sorry.
questions.
And another question. My name's Derek. I had another question here. We're talking about the beautification, doing some things and wanting repair, putting in this roundabout.
I was just looking, I don't know if you guys have ever looked at, have been down south and looked at the roads that we have here. Our roads are terrible. And so, I mean, just beyond that, and then plus the fact that I don't know if you guys go drive through the Cary Park and come out through the park and come up, through South Main. We need a lot of work there done too as well. And we're talking about something that shouldn't have never even got this bad to begin with. And so I don't understand the situation here. If we're concerned about our streets and our bridges and towns and things like that, it seems like we'd be taking care of everything in Hutchinson. The south end of town needs some bad fixing. I mean, we need to fix everything in Hutch if we want to start doing that, because most of us made before we could go north, most of us made our profits and our fortunes down south. So we have to remember that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jeff, maybe you can speak to the deferred maintenance on the bridge, but if you came in late, you may not have heard that this was actually not a city-owned bridge for the first 45 years of its projected 50-year life, so we did inherit it.
Yeah, in 2005, plus or minus, we inherited this corridor after they did some improvements on the Avenue F and Avenue D bridge. So after that, and these are big ticket items for the city, so yes, we do have a quarter cent sales tax, half of which the city gets for street maintenance and those types of things, and that goes mainly to what I just said, street maintenance, that we have our projects each year throughout the community. The working on the bridges and those types of things would typically be a bonded type project, so that would go through the CIP and those types of things, how we would handle those. So,
okay,
or try to get grants or those types of things, which we've been trying to do for the last few years.
Yes, I will remind people that the reason we haven't taken very needed action on this in the last few years is because we were really hanging our hats on getting a federal grant that would cover 75-80% of it.
Yeah, roughly 80%, 85%.
80%, and tried for those grants, the build and then the Tiger for the last 3 years. But yeah, it really speaks to the need to eliminate them if possible so that we can reduce overall maintenance costs and spend more money on the roads, on the road upkeep. Bridges are expensive to maintain.
I just want to clarify too, Avenue D and F bridges were replaced, I think about in 2005, 2003, something like that, before Kdot handed Woodie Seat over to the city.
Okay.
So those bridges are actually some of the newer bridges that we have, and at the same time, A, B, and C are some of the, worst, or B is certainly the worst. So we would be, if we went with option 5, just to be clear, we would be demolishing 2 fairly new bridges that are not in urgent need of any repairs at this time.
Okay, thank you. Are there other comments from the audience? Please please come to the podium, state your name and address, and we'll be limiting comments to 3 to 5 minutes.
I'm Rod Calhoun and live at 424 West First. Have the house for 45 years, and just want to make a comment about the concerns about notifying the residents in the area. And this is, I'd have to look back, but it seems about 3 years that it's been discussed. And to me, if a person doesn't know about it, I don't know where they've been. So to me, it'd be, I guess, nice to get input, but on the other hand, at some point, you've got to make a decision. Mm-hmm. And I think you know the opposing views, and I think as a council, you just have to say, okay, here we are, we need to make a decision and go forward instead of continuing to talk about it for another couple of years as prices increase and the bridges deteriorate more. And as an indication, I guess I'm more in favor of the roundabout concept. I think that was number 3, which to me, cost-wise, makes a lot more sense and a lot less maintenance on into the future, which we, also need to think about individuals in the future and what it's going to cost them in the future, not just us today.
Okay, thank you very much.
Jesse Garcia Juma. The gentleman there actually makes a point. It's not. First of all, I don't know. Did you catch that we have a Southwest Bricktown meeting this Monday, 1/24?
Yes, but Greg indicated that the agenda was already kind of full.
Nope, it's not really.
No, if I said that,
There's
that's
not
what
really
I meant.
anything that
Okay.
we're doing at the
Okay.
at Monday's meeting that we can't postpone, and especially if we have a subject that's as urgent as this, that we want to, try to accomplish some things and within some deadlines and stuff, that's not a problem. So there is a date, this 24th. On the other hand, we're kind of riding on what the gentleman just said earlier. I think we all know, Commissioner, Councilman Fast and Steve, it's not like we haven't had meetings about this through the years, and plenty. It's not like the council hasn't been there. It's not like Jeff hasn't been there, the engineer. That we've had these meetings with Southwest Bricktown. So in some ways, yes, to keep having these meetings and meetings and meetings, we've done that. I'm not saying let's not do it. I'm not saying anything against my neighbors and my family and anything like that, But it's just we've had these talks already. So, it is getting to the point where we just have to make a decision and move on something. And I really haven't made a decision either. I haven't made a decision either way, what to do, which way to go. But, obviously it is time that we start getting down to some decision-making things, and we can't just keep having meetings and meetings and meetings. So anyway, it is a possibility that you could attend to our meeting this Monday. And the thing about that with these meetings is that, what kind of attendance do we have there? It flows, some months we have more and some months we have less. And it's the usual suspects, if I want to say that, that come and everything like that. So can we get more people? Actually, what I think from experience in the past too is that when we do something and promote and try to get something happening, like in a quicker, like say by Monday, if we try to go and tell more people that you need to be here this Monday, it seems like we do get a response, as opposed to like maybe if we wait another month and try to get more people to come that way. Sometimes when we make a quicker response, sometimes we get a better response. So Monday could be a possibility. It could happen.
And where is that taking place?
At the Avenue A School.
Okay, and what time?
6:30.
It's usually 6:30, yeah. So I don't know that we'd get any better response this Monday than we would if we waited another month to have a meeting for this, Let's just put it
That's
that way.
really great input. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, so, and
I'm sorry I
actually,
wasn't clear on that, Jade.
No,
They're super flexible when we go to those meetings. When I'm there and
Okay.
Steve's there, we get off on
and I al-
tangents, but we certainly would concentrate
Yeah.
a big portion of that meeting on this.
and
think.
Adam goes with whatever direction we want to go, So, and Adam knows too that if this is a pertinent issue that we need to talk to, and if we need to devote this meeting to this subject, that's fine. It can be done. Like I said, I almost think that we probably would get a good response, because for one thing, this is going to make the news, this is going to make the papers, and people are going to be talking about it. It's going to be on media, social media, because it's a pertinent thing. And I think because of all that is why Monday could possibly be a good turnout if you were to come down on Monday. So figure that out. But the other question I had, though, too, was that on the funding, I thought last month the state announced that they had highway infrastructure that included bridges. Was it $700 million or not? Or was I over reading something?
I'm not aware of that.
And then
Unless
I
you're
was reading an
talking about
article.
infrastructure bill.
Oh, there's Steve. Yeah, Jeff. And then also, I think within that same announcement, they said, and then we're going to allot like another 140 million annually. What am I reading or missing?
Yes, they do have some money, and this is $225 million that is strictly for bridges. They have other infrastructure money also available, but those aren't necessarily specific to bridge improvements throughout the state and those types of things. Other projects also, infrastructure-wise, would be applicable. I don't know about the amounts you had said, Jesse, but I just know about this 225 million, which strictly is for bridges going forward, and I don't know how many years that's over, but.
You might be speaking of the IKE program, the Comprehensive Transportation Program.
Yeah.
From the Fed?
Oh, no. And
No, I'm talking.
It was from the federal
seems to
government.
come specifically from the state. I mean, I'll have to look at it again. I thought I looked at it. I mean, I did look at it, but I forgot what the number was. I don't remember, because 700 million does sound kind of high. But, so I was thinking, well, what did I read? Was it 70? Was it 7 million? Was it 70 million? Was it 700 million? But I have that article, so I'll find it, and then I'll get back with somebody and see, why. Because I was almost going to get a hold of one of the legislatures and, or even, anyway, another guy in the state. But anyway, about where is this money, or where did this money go to? And can we use it to put it towards this bridge repair, or bring them down that we're doing in Hutchinson? So what do you guys think about Monday?
I mean, if council is in agreement, I think it's a really good idea to try to have someone there to present these different options to the residents. I will say at this juncture, I'm really leaning toward option 3. I really appreciate your efforts to put together option 5, because I know we wanted some sort of design that wouldn't require the closure of B. But when I look at some of the ramifications of that, I'm just not sure it's viable, and it might be an exercise in futility to study it for another year and delay this project for another year and increase costs and possibly see more degradation of that structure that could, put people at risk. That's just where I stand, but I do think, I'm only one opinion. The residents might want to hear, as Cecilia mentioned, what all went into the different design options and what are the pros and cons. So even if we do go with option 3, I think, they deserve to hear what those final 5 options are and what we're up against, regardless of what we choose.
Okay, so the thing with Monday then is what makes it pertinent is that, okay, so if you guys want to come to the Monday meeting, fine. Then what that does for us and in our community, we can start getting the word out this weekend to attend this meeting, Monday, because you guys are going to be represented. The other question is, how is this going to work? Because you can't have more than 3 councilmen in the room at the same time, kind of thing?
Well, we could make it an open meeting.
Right.
1, and 2, I may be in Topeka, so I may not be able to attend.
Right,
but,
okay. But yeah, so let's do what you guys need to do so that there could be more than 3 of you there possible, if that's the case.
Well, how would that work from?
I can answer that.
Yeah.
Actually, what that is, it's the Southwest Bricktown meeting.
Okay.
Okay? And if the majority of the council's there, 3 members are there, if you're not discussing it directly with the members and reaching a consensus, if it's a presentation by our engineering department, you can be present, and it's not, as long as you're not discussing it there as a majority of the council, you can do that.
Okay. That's no violation of COMA, so.
No.
I think if I go to the meeting or not, I think I need to make sure I'm open to the area of Northwest to hear their opinions on it too, and throw that out there, just like Mr. Garza and Greg are concentrating on the Southwest. I'm going to try to make it.
And Steve, I know, and we're all with you about trying to put the South end together as far as East and West goes. So do you think you can get people from Southeast to attend the meeting also?
I will put it out there and see what we can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can put it out there. Best way for me right now to put it out there is put it out there by email. Facebook's what I'm trying to say.
Right. Which is what we would all use. I mean, we have our own Southwest Bricktown Facebook page.
I will put it out there and
That's
see how many people.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what I'm going to do. So if they want to come, then fine. Then that way we can start using all that social media that we have, all the avenues that we have. Cecile, what do you think?
I put it out there.
Yeah.
For this meeting.
Yeah. So
Jesse, how many meetings?
Let's do it Monday.
Has this been a topic that you've been to? Because I know that we hosted several when John Deerdoff was still here. I guess my point being is that this will be the last public meeting we have on this because staff needs direction on this project.
Jeff, you've been down?
We cannot put it off longer.
I know John went to one by himself, and then I went to one with John down at Southwest Bricktown. And then we had another one here, another year.
And then,
gonna say there's at least three.
Three that I remember.
okay.
So I just want to make clear that, our group is going to start promoting then that you guys will be there, or the city reputation will be there. And Jeff, are you going to be there then again?
Well,
Or what's it?
well, I think we should be if we're going to be presenting options, or at least be
I
a
think
party
he
to
just
that.
got voluntold by you guys.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like. So that's what.
I don't mean to.
No.
Okay, then, we're going to start promoting that you guys will make a or the city will make a
Yeah,
presentation.
that sounds good. And people need to know that if they want to hear this before we make a decision in February, before we make a formal decision on design, then they need to be at that meeting because we don't wish to delay it further.
I have one more question.
Mhm.
I don't want to intrude on the Southwest Bricktown meeting. Is this open to people of the community that have concerns on this?
Everybody.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be respectful of everybody involved in the
Yeah.
situation.
No, but yes, and listen to Hutchinson, when we call a meeting for the Southwest Bricktown, it's just like the fiesta that we had, last year. It's not just about Southwest Bricktown, it's anybody in town can come to and we encourage everybody in town to come down because that's one of the goals is just to bring everybody together and everybody share our space, which our space might be Southwest Hutchinson. So, but it's the same space for everybody. So, yeah, anybody's welcome. And of course, it's an open meeting. And of course, we invite anybody from Hutchinson that wants to come can come.
Okay. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
Are there others in the audience who would like to comment on this item? Please come up and state your name.
Good evening, I'm Rafaela Garcia, and I live right off of F and Adams, so I get all the traffic now that goes by. But what I want to know is, how long is F Street going to be the main street to get to South Hutch?
That's a great question.
During the construction process?
talking about the current
Or now?
Well, yeah, until everything gets going and everything, because I get all kinds of traffic, which it doesn't bother me because I know a lot of semis and I just see everybody coming. I just want to know how long it's going to be till everything, is it going to be like a year or?
No. So like you mean with the current repair right now, with the reason it's closed right now? No, actually, I showed you the pictures. They've started the demolition. They're actually cleaning it out. They're supposed to be done at the end of the day today. First thing tomorrow, we're going to go and evaluate it. And then we're going to, so we can put a timeline on when we believe it can be reopened. It's not going to be, it's not going to be a year. And then as soon as we gather enough information and we work with Public Works and their staff, we'll be putting out another press release with an estimated time when we believe it'll be reopened.
Oh, okay, that's what I was doing. And then another thing on like closing the F Street ramps, I don't think would be such a good idea because I know a lot of semis from Tyson's come down that F Street ramp. I have right behind my house where the old city dump trucks used to park years ago. I don't know who has it now, but there's a lot of semis that park in there, so I don't know if it's a company that just has semis because they're always coming down down to, G Street, and they come down and they turn on F Street and go up through Woodie Seat Freeway up that way. So I do there's a lot of semi traffic that goes by the house.
I don't know. Are you talking about? You mean talking right here?
Right here.
Okay, so let me maybe enlighten Ralph and enlighten what she's talking about. No, listen. That's a semi truck repair shop back there. And that's why you see a lot of traffic going back there because it's a repair shop.
But you also see semis going for Coots And then you have woodwork manufacturing. So you got a lot of industrial people.
Well, no, because I see them parked back there, and then they turn on and come on F Street and go out
Oh, you're
Woodie
talking
Seat
about
Freeway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
So
the reason
I
why
was-
they would
I
park there
understand.
because their trucks are there for repair.
Because
thought
if
you
they
were talking
close
about
it, and then
traffic.
everybody has to go down the other bridge to come down South Main, that's gonna be just more heavy
Mhm. So would that be like
with
option
the semis and
5?
stuff.
Yeah, so option 5 would result in
Mhm.
having to reroute all that.
Mhm.
I'm sure that those industrial businesses on South Main would have pretty strong feelings about that option. So I appreciate
And
that
then there's
perspective.
another one too, used to be Mega. It's I heard it was like a fireworks thing. They have all their semis parked out there and stuff too, so, and all
Belino.
that too, so.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you so much.
Uh-huh, thank you.
Anyone else in the audience who would like to address the council? Are there further comments from the council on this?
I know this is harsh, but do we have a kind of what meeting we like to get this, a timeline we want to get it?
Yeah, so I think the idea is that we'll have city staff available at the Southwest Bricktown meeting on Monday at 6:30, Avenue A School. The public is invited to attend that. Anybody interested in this project is encouraged to attend. At that point, we need to come to a consensus as a council on which option by the second meeting in February. I mean, honestly, probably that first meeting, if we feel like we have enough information, we should go ahead and move forward. So there's enough time to put together a grant application for the Kdot cost share opportunity. Also, if people have additional opinions about this, you can feel free to call us at any time. If you didn't know, the website for the city, hutchgov.com, does list our personal phone numbers and our emails, and you can reach out at any time. So I encourage you to do that. But yeah, does staff feel like they have what they need? I guess you didn't get an answer yet,
It's
but
a start though, and I think we're moving toward
yeah,
some type of direction for sure. So.
yeah.
I don't want to continue to rehash, but I'm curious what Angela thinks. Is this going to derail every other project that we have in the next 3 years, 4 years?
We will hold this against you.
I
You
want
gotta
your
get some grants,
opinion.
man.
Okay, I was anticipating this to come up. So I looked at our adopted CIP plan that we have through 2026. So over the next 4 years, because that's as far as staff have requested things, we have $22.5 million worth of projects that will need bonded. That's $5.6 million a year, and we normally can bond just over $6 million. So yes, when it comes time to budget the next 5 years, I think going into the 2023 budget, we're going to have to account for this. And that's also why I talked with Jessica about bonding it in phases, because then it doesn't completely derail a whole year's worth of CIP projects. We can incorporate some of those major things like road projects by bonding over several years. And I know bonding in phases increases bonding costs, but that's why we would bond it with other projects as well. But we're going to have some tough discussions about what can wait 3 years, not just 1 year, and push those out or eliminate them entirely. So there are some bigger projects that we're going to have to evaluate.
And I know the city manager did indicate that there's a potential to use our state and local fiscal recovery funds. We're waiting on results from a community input report before making a decision on that, and would definitely want to highly weigh the opinions that went into that study. But there, we'll get creative, because I don't want to take everything off the table.
That's exactly right. The interim final rule, the final rule, was released last week, and they have issued guidance that municipalities can use up to $10 million of their ARPA funds for revenue replacement, which allows you to use it for anything that you would normally be allowed to spend money on, with a few restrictions. But we could use our entire ARPA for this. I'm not saying we should. We're getting a little over $6 million, but we are allowed to.
And this won't hurt our credit rating. I mean, we will be mindful of that, and this won't.
We would be mindful of that.
Okay.
We would have to work with the other projects. I don't think we would ever go over our bonding capacity, and we would want to be mindful of our total debt load, looking at our credit rating. But that's why we would try to work in other projects and be mindful of our limits.
Thank you, Angela.
Thank you. Okay.
Is there any chance there would be some preliminary phone calls with the railroad option before the Monday night meeting? I'm asking.
We can surely attempt to. I
We
think
can make the call out.
we don't
I
always,
understand.
we don't always get stuff.
Out into the
It would at
ether.
least look good to show that we're trying to make the effort
Sure,
to
and
make the phone call.
that's kind of what I had on my list.
Jeff, one other thing. Could you just ballpark a pedestrian path underneath the 11 foot of dirt that would possibly be on B Street? I mean, I know it'll be.
You
a
mean
box.
for option 3?
For option 3, yes. I think it
We
would
can
be
get one,
important if we
and I don't know
decide
how
that.
much it.
Well,
affect-
I mean, I
just
don't
have
mean
to-
now.
We gotta,
maybe
no,
by
no,
then.
but I mean, we'd have to make sure it would actually fit in there.
Okay.
Some
Amount of
heights and some
cover you need
things.
to have on
We had,
that.
Crawl.
there's logistic things we probably need to look at before we.
Like the zoo, those little, those
So you
little
don't have to
tunnels
walk
the kids.
like-
You have the 11 foot to the pavement, but then we have to figure thickness of pavement, and
Yeah.
the bearing that's going to
Yeah.
be put on the walk tunnel, and then accounting for all of the electrical, because you're going to probably want it lit. You're not going to want a really big
Yes,
tunnel,
for
and then
sure.
There's a bunch of different things, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just get right on that.
You got a few days, man. All right. Well, any further comments or questions? If not, I think that concludes our discussion, and we look forward to hearing more on Monday evening. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to think how we.